Right, so good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the first webinar of Impact on Nutrition. And this webinar is focused on Odisha and what the Impact on Nutrition partners are doing in tackling COVID-19 in Odisha. So this is a 1 hour webinar which we have, and the flow is like this. We'll have Ms. Gitanjali Master from UNICEF, who's a part of the platform, which is incubating the impact on nutrition, setting the context. Then we'll have our session moderator, Mr. Saurav Bhattacharjee, from the nutrition specialist at the UNICEF Odisha Field Office, come in. He's the session moderator. Our panelists for today are Mr. Somishri Omprakash Sahu from Paradeep Phosphates and Ms. Sweta Upadhyay from Aditya Aluminium, Lapanga. We follow once the question and answer session between the moderator and panelists are over. We will follow it with an open house of question and answer. Please type in your questions into the chat box directed at either me or Shweta. Once we are done with the question and answers, we will have the closing remarks and way forward by Ms. Monica Nielsen, who is the Chief of Field Office for Odisha, UNICEF Odisha. Right, so with that, I would just request Gitanjali to start.
Thank you so much, Shubhrajyoti, and a very good afternoon to everyone who is on this webinar today. Very warm welcome from the Impact for Nutrition team. These are unprecedented times, and I would like to begin with the hope that everyone and their families are safe and secure. It is COVID, but also in Odisha, it is grappling right now with the cyclone. So the hope is that everyone in your business value chains, employees, customers, suppliers, partners, and everybody that we work with and their families are safe and secure. And I think in the times of crisis and normal times, both, the importance of a collective really comes through. And really, that's what Impact for Nutrition is. Convened by UNICEF, Tata Trust, Sight and Life, CSR Box, CII, UN Global Compact, NASCOM Foundation, and many others. This platform was launched on March 13, 2019 in New Delhi. And basically, the platform which is being incubated by UNICEF is a brand agnostic, non-financial commitment-based platform for companies to leverage support to come together and really highlight the importance of nutrition within their own business ecosystems. It's a private sector platform. In the time, of COVID-19, Impact for Nutrition has seen a very different kind of priority and focus, and essentially, as a collective, as a secretariat, and also while engaging with our private sector pledged partners, two of who you will hear today, and we're very grateful to them to share their experiences. What has become of priority is that we want to continue to engage with the private sector. The platform wants to continue to engage with the private sector because in this time, the need for good nutrition has become a priority. And that's very much good nutrition linked to immunity, the importance of immunity in productivity, for anything in the long term to create sustainable solutions is absolutely crucial. And so that's the reason that we need to continue to collectively look at good nutrition across our ecosystems. And I think most of you will also be aware that, when we talk about according to the Copenhagen Consensus, investing in nutrition is also the most strategic, the most important investment one can make. Because when we look at a $1 investment, you have a $16 return, you have a decrease in absenteeism, you have an increase in employee retention, you increase productivity. So I think that understanding we all who are collected here very most definitely have. So before just ending, I'd like to highlight that Impact for Nutrition has 3 key building blocks. And those are the ACE card, as we call it. So we look at how private sector and companies can play a significant role. The first one being the assets, the core assets for nutrition. every company has core assets, every business has core assets. How can they utilize effectively their assets toward nutrition? The second is C, which is CSR for nutrition. You already have CSR programs running. Many of them are um, not specifically on nutrition, but many of the issues are absolutely synergized and integrated with nutrition. Nutrition is not standalone. It's very much linked to health, wash, and other issues. And the third part is E, which is the E of the ACE, which is employee engagement. Workforce nutrition is becoming crucial globally, and these times even more. So, how can we use the three building blocks, use the ACE card to try and reach out and do the best we can? So, that is about impact for nutrition. We are hopeful that we engage meaningfully with the private sector. They have already been on board as partners with us, and we hope to increase and take this forward in a more meaningful way. Thank you, Shubhrajyoti, and thank you all once again for joining.
Yeah, thanks, Gitanjali. So now I'd like to invite our moderator, Mr. Saurav, to please.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Welcome to this very interesting one hour webinar wherein we will be discussing like what both Shubhrajyoti and Gitanjali mentioned about how we are all of us as partners, corporates, civil society, international organizations, how are we coping with this COVID, what all we are doing. Um, Having said that, I would just like to highlight a couple of things. One is that even though COVID presents a very unique problem in the sense that it is a health crisis. It's a pandemic. It's a health crisis, and as a result, the entire health machinery is geared up in terms of identifying. People who are either infected or who are showing the signs of the disease, who are who have then to be actually stopped from spreading it to others. They are quarantined, they are given medical care and treatment. But one point which I would like all of you to really think is about the entire issue about nutrition, which is and food insecurity, which is quickly coming to the fore. As all of you know, to prevent the spread of this deadly virus, all the state governments and the government of India, they have kind of prevented and prohibited people to go out and mingle with each other. So life, it's a totally different normal. Life is not as it used to be. And having said that, when we interact with uh, our communities, our stakeholders in the field, we also come to know that there are areas which are showing signs of food insecurity. And with the food insecurity, global evidence has also shown, our state evidence has also shown, with this increasing food insecurity, wherein people either have less to eat, they are eating in terms of the meal frequencies, there is eating less frequently. Then what is happening is there are certain families which are thinking of selling off assets to meet the household food requirement. The portion sizes have reduced. People are kind of moving to lesser nutritious foods. For example, the quality of pulses or the quality of fruits and vegetables which they are supposed to eat, they are no longer eating because of lack of money at their lack of resources at their disposal. And coupled with it, the entire livelihoods which has taken a beating because of this severe crisis, because people have not been able to move out, people have not been able to do their regular work. So it is putting everything in terms of nutrition insecurity, which is exemplified, which will be exemplified, which are currently being exemplified by increases in proportion of children who are either chronically undernourished, as shown by stunted children. The severe acute malnutrition, it's also rising. And the problem herein is with any kind of SAM cases which would be rising, the health infrastructure is no longer geared, because the health infrastructure, it's spending a lot of its resources in managing people who are affected by the disease, and thus the capacity of the health infrastructure is also stretched out. So we, along with the state government, we have kind of looked at some of the more important things which is very critical at this stage, and which I would just like to give you a glimpse on is, for example, we have told along with the state government in one voice, we have told that people should regularly continue using the health and nutrition services which is being delivered in the current situation. Currently, they are not being delivered in the normal manner, as in the people coming to Anganwadis to receive those services. Then we have mentioned that for pregnant women, they should take utmost care, and they should eat various kinds of food which are either rich in omega-3 fatty acids, folic acids, vitamin B12, vitamin B6. Then we have also told that they should eat at least three main meals, including two snacks. They should eat fresh and cooked food, including local foods and vegetables, and drink at least 8 glasses of water, and also access the take-home rations from the Anganwadi center. Then we have kind of told people, and this is a message I would also like to give to everybody in terms of healthy eating. See, there are no superfoods, and this is also something which all of us needs to closely look at. There are no superfoods which can prevent or cure COVID-19. However, there are certain foods which are rich in antioxidant nutrients, for example, vitamin C, vitamin E, vitamin A, iron, zinc, selenium, omega-3 and omega-6 fatty acids, which basically boosts the body's immunity. And when I say these, the how the body reacts to this disease is basically dependent on how strong your body is to actually fight the external infections. And we have dark green leafy vegetables, we have vitamin C rich foods, we have yellow orange fruits and vegetables, we have nuts, millets, whole pulses and legumes, we have egg and non-vegetarian food, milk and milk products, omega-3 and omega-6 fatty acids, herbs, spices and condiments, all of which if you consume on a daily basis, not necessarily in terms of costly foods, but also foods which are grown in the rural households, if you have, these are also locally available. So how do you consume those foods to ensure that you get your daily nutrient requirements and thus stay healthy with your immune systems intact? Also, I would like to highlight some of the areas which because all of us and some of you in this discussion, I believe, are also going to speak about the food relief that you would provide, that you are providing or you are thinking of providing to the populations that you serve. So here I would like to mention a couple of points. One is that, and this has been a guidance which has been issued by the World Health Organization, World Food Program, UNICEF, as a joint advisory, in the sense that you should only promote nutritious and healthy food that are nutritionally adequate at all times. So and maintaining, because maintaining a healthy diet at this time is very, very essential. The more unhealthy food options that we give to communities, the more we are making them at risk towards conducting, getting this infection. And we need to give this message to all pregnant. So when you are actually giving some food to the households, you should also supplement with messages, for example, that breastfeeding women, breastfeeding mothers, pregnant women and children, they need to consume adequate and sufficient foods and vegetables and whole grains and foods basically which are rich in proteins. So whatever food supplies, whatever food relief that you are planning to give should not actually undermine the healthy dietary practices. Then we should take into context, when we are giving food relief, we should take into context or consideration the local context, cultural preferences, and basically whatever foods communities are generally consuming to fulfill the nutrient gap that you are thinking of addressing. And the food donations should which are either ready to eat or cooked food should be accompanied by a laboratory report classifying them as fit for consumption. And packaging of the food should clearly reflect information on the date of production, best before, and and nutritional value. All the foods should have FSSAI labels and standards and conform to those standards. standards. Then we should also we should also help during this food distribution, food relief distribution. You should also basically, you can disseminate message on COVID-19 prevention, breastfeeding, complementary feeding, and healthy diets. So one message on breastfeeding which I would like to give here, and which should form a part of your message to the communities, is continue breastfeeding irrespective of the COVID symptom of either the mother or the child. But you have to practice essential hygiene, which is oral hygiene and hand hygiene. Then we should also kind of look at very carefully, we should look at that unhealthy foods, for example, please make a note of it, that which are high in saturated fats, free sugar, salt, these should be prevented. And then when because drinking water is going to be a problem, so under no circumstances should sweetened beverage, sugar sweetened beverages should be provided, and they should always be encouraged to have a healthy diet. One point which I would like to highlight here, which is very because now we are also kind of scared of a cyclone hitting us. So one point which I would like all of you to kindly take note of is that the breast milk substitutes should never be promoted within the community, because they run the risk of substituting mother's milk with a very unhealthy substitute. So these are the kind of things which you should all take note of. Obviously, while you are doing the distribution planning, the relief distribution, you should ensure that your staff, people who are distributing, should be safe. They should be having necessary PPEs. There should be social distancing. There should be adequate hygiene and sanitation measures which should be followed. Having said that, I would just like to highlight a few important things which UNICEF has been working with the state government. One is basically looking at zero crowd, so the Anganwadi center, take home ration delivered at the doorstep, substituting the hot cooked meal which is generally provided by the Anganwadi centers with dry ration. We have also been working with the state government to promote community kitchens by the women SHGs for the poor and the destitute, and the self-help groups. We have been working with self-help groups who have come in very handy and have provided a crucial helping hand. And very interestingly, this is one of the innovations which Odisha has shown to the rest of the country, is while they are delivering the midday meals, while they are delivering the textbooks to the students, they are also delivering the dose of weekly iron folic acid. So they are giving a strip of IFA for those adolescent girls to consume, and this is being administered through the school and mass education department. Anganwadi workers and Anganwadi helpers, they are providing services. So I am very happy to state that Odisha is one of the few states which, in spite of the fact that the central government declared a kind of a stoppage to outreach services, Odisha government continued the outreach services of RMNCH, which is reproductive child health and nutrition and maternal nutrition services, with following various hygiene and sanitation practices. Obviously, we have been supporting the state government. We have probably been able to reach all the frontline functionaries of health, nutrition, which is health, WCD, the livelihoods mission, Panchayati Raj functionaries. We have kind of reached them with innovative online capsular training sessions, which looks at several facets. For example, it looks at hygiene, sanitation, it looks at the health actions, it looks at the nutrition actions. It also looks at some of the stigma and discrimination which is currently being faced by communities, and specifically the service providers, people who are providing the most critical service. So what are the way ahead? The way ahead is we have to ensure the continuity of outreach services, because in some areas the RMNCHS services had been stopped. The basic health, nutrition, maternal health and nutrition, and child health and nutrition services had been stopped. Those sub-centers which had, both in the urban areas as well as rural areas, which had positive cases of COVID. So we now have to get back. The COVID cases have probably recovered. Where the cases have recovered, going back to the previous practice in terms of ensuring that no child, no woman is left out of the RMNCHS services. Then streamlining home delivery through essential health services, through supplies through the Anganwadi workers. And by this, I also include the counseling services which the frontline functions are bringing. So accessing various vulnerability reduction funds to either promote kitchen gardens, because at this point in time, it is very, very essential. We have got very beautiful case studies which showed that promoting of household kitchen gardens has actually helped in ensuring food and nutrition security to the most vulnerable of the population. And the last but not the least, we know that Odisha has, just like several other states, has a huge inflow of migrant children. The migrant, they call them the Prabashi Odiyas. So people who have been working out, or for either for as temporary migration or as long-term migration, are coming back to their homelands. So how do we deal with health and nutrition services for the most vulnerable of those women and children is also something that we need to focus on. Having said that, I would now move on, and I would like to look at, we have our panelists here. I would like to look at the role of the private sector in this present crisis. We have two corporate representatives here with us. Two of them who are pledged from Paradeep Phosphates and Aditya Aluminium, who are currently with us with the i4N platform. May I now request? Okay, may I now request Shomasri from Paradeep Phosphates to kindly unmute?
Yeah. Good afternoon, all. So I think I'm audible to all of you.
Yes, Shomasri.
Yeah.
So, Shomasri,
yeah.
I have a question for you, and I would like to request you, while you are speaking, to kindly touch a bit on that particular topic. Given that a large section of the community is rendered helpless during this time, what factors weigh when you are choosing a target group to whom you would reach out with relief work? And I believe that your relief work has now been extended to transgenders, senior citizens, visually impaired communities.
So when we started our relief work, our work is divided into two sectors. One is like urban sector and is rural sector. When we found out that in most of urban sectors, they are neglected. So most of the families are daily wages, and the vulnerable families like the transgender community also. So they are based out in the urban sector. And in rural particularly, the government is taking care of the rural community by providing rice and direct farm transport to them. So when we decided to go for, in a periphery area, when decided to go for relief support, so first it came to our mind that we need to take stock of the things whom we are going to address in this situation. Like initially in a periphery area, we found out that there are a huge number of transgender communities are there. Those who are due to lockdown, they are suffering a lot, and there are visually impaired groups. So I mean, there are no support to them. And a senior citizen group wherein like every month we used to support them in daily ration support, but due to lockdown, the things are stopped immediately on field. Like nobody reached to them, and providing support to them is just impossible.
Yeah, Someshri, a small request. Please come closer to the mic.
Okay. So in our relief support, we reached out to, we divided our relief support in two categories. That is support during lockdown and support in post-lockdown support. So in our, particularly the group whom we address, so there are transgender groups, there are senior citizen, visually impaired group, pregnant women and lactating mothers, the children's of age group 0 to 2 years. So in our CSR activities, we initially distributed dry ration kit to these vulnerable groups. So this from Paradeep, we basically our plant periphery is in Paradeep. So we took care of the things in plant periphery villages. So we spread out to 25 villages, and 2 slums area of Paradip municipality. So, like the dry ration kit support reached out to all the vulnerable families based out in plant periphery. That is the initial things. And post-COVID, if you'll ask me, the post-COVID, post-lockdown situation. So we have planned these 2 things. In the lockdown period, me and our volunteers of NGO partners, we reached out to each households. We distributed masks and soap to every household. We almost we distributed 20,000 masks. It's being manufactured by the SSGs to the households. So in our activities, we first take care of the things like we'll reach out to the last mile people who are suffering a lot in this lockdown period. Yeah. Yeah, so
Saurav, you're muted.
okay. So this is the things first we reach out to the vulnerable communities first, and that is the things.
Okay. So given that you are working with the various vulnerable groups, just like you had mentioned about the senior citizens, transgenders, visually impaired, how do you plan to continue support now and post COVID? Because, as I mentioned earlier, that it's going to be a new normal. Like the few days back, I was discussing with some of my colleagues that what would be like going to office, or what would be like working in communities now like? I mean, it's totally, the things have changed. So given that fact that you are working with various vulnerable groups, how would you plan to support now and post COVID in ensuring that the various nutritional challenges and requirements are met and addressed?
So in present scenario, we are very much doing the sanitation and awareness drive in the community. So in our geographical area, like 25 villages and 2 slums, so there's a regular sanitation drive is going on, awareness activities is going on. Our volunteers with all protective measures, they're reaching to the households like the old senior citizen and the destitute families. So we are providing social and psychological counseling in this period, which it basically shows that we are there to support all the families who are in the other end, who are suffering a lot. So this is kind of hand-holding support. So beside that, with the support of UNICEF and Odisha State Legal Services Authority, and present scenario, we distributed personal hygiene kit to 101 children care institution. So we are taking care of the children's also. So if you see, the most of our activities now going on sanitation and awareness. But post lockdown, what we have planned now, like the immediate target group in front of us is the pregnant and lactating women, the senior citizen, and the children of age group 0 to 2. So we have initiated now. Through our community approach, we have now developed a model, like we are creating a nursery in our project villages, wherein the poorest of the poor category families they are deployed to raise the nursery. So they are getting the daily wages from the activities, and simultaneously what we have planned, like for the immediate support, we have given a nutritional kit containing soya, horse gram, rajma, and Bengal gram. So it's a just kit. So we are supplying it to the pregnant and lactating mothers with the support of ASA and Anganwadi workers. So that's going on in 25 villages and in 2 slums. So the second thing is, like in the kit, we are providing a leaflet containing the information like what are the nutrition like available, like foods, the spinach, and if it's a different kind of things. So we made a list and we kept it inside of that packet so that anyone can go for it and see what are the things available in my periphery or in my nearby, at my home also, so that I can take it as a nutrition to address my nutrition deficit.
Mhm.
So once that I mentioned about the nursery. So once this nursery raised, and I think during this monsoon, so we'll
Mhm.
get all the nursery uh, the saplings. So particularly we have raised the variety of lemon,
Okay.
drumstick, papaya, and spinach also. Spinach seed will supply to every household. So
Mhm.
to raise the kitchen garden, as also nutri garden also we are promoting in our villages. So we
Wonderful.
have, let's say, 10,000 odd households. So we are going to supply this saplings to all the households to address the nutrition deficit in future. So that is one of the critical intervention is going on.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Wonderful.
Again, I
Wonderful.
just
Yeah, please.
is that I
Please.
just with the support, we are intensely working with the local government here. The block development officer is very cooperative, and with the CDP also is very cooperative. So with their support, with the support of ASA and Anganwadi workers, we are reaching to every household. Where I mean, we are monitoring the delivery of this take-home ration or other supplements which government is providing. Whether it is reaching to all the households, we are ensuring it with our NGO partner. So ASA and Anganwadi workers, the frontline workers for us, they are supporting a lot, and with their support, we are reaching all the households and providing psychological and social counseling, and like the government service delivery is also happening in Anganwadi.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Very nice to hear, Shomashri, about the work Paradip Phosphates is currently undertaking. As you mentioned, mainly in wash, hygiene, and sanitation, but increasingly we are moving towards nutrition and food security areas. So we have seen how the most affected communities are being provided with food and hygiene kits. My next question would be to Aditya Aluminium. Shweta Upadhyay is here. Welcome, Shweta. A lot of your relief work has been disinfecting and sanitization of villages and colonies. Now that a large portion of migrant workers are returning to their native village, and this is a scene which we are seeing beamed and broadcasted across our televisions, our social media channels. Do you plan to carry out more community awareness campaigns and drives around good nutrition, good hygiene practices? Because I consider that hygiene and sanitation, and I'm a very strong proponent of it, is part of nutrition interventions. They consist a gamut of nutrition sensitive practices, healthy nutritious diets, as you also distribute dry ration in ensuring that they are taking the proper precautionary measures. Over to
Yeah, uh, thank you so much, and good afternoon, everyone. So, at Aditya, with this unprecedented COVID pandemic, we are in a VUCA situation. We all are in, and we all had to have a paradigm shift in our operations and all the aspects of our functioning, whether community or plant. And as a corporate, we had multifaceted challenges. As you said that Aditya has been reaching out to the community all out, hand in hand with the frontline workers and the government. So we are totally in sync with the government, and yes, uh, from the mask N95 masks to ICU beds, ventilators that we have provided to district administration, we have gone all out with our sanitation measures, creating awareness among community to use soap and wash their hands, use masks. So and it was a good thing to see that community, especially in this part of the area, was very aware in terms of social distancing and not allowing, rather than urban, this rural part has been more aware in terms of not allowing the strangers or outsiders to come inside their plants. And while we have a big bunch of our migrant laborers, we have also worked with them on their awareness campaigns, ensuring their behavioral change in terms of social distancing, using of mask, and as you said that yes, talking of dry ration and nutrition, definitely that has been one part that we are working with pregnant ladies and the vulnerable sections. Government is doing a good job, as Someshi was also saying that in Odisha, it has been a great thing to see that our PDS systems have worked doorstep deliveries, and people have got the ration. The pregnant ladies have got their dry rations from the government. So we have not duplicated anything that government has been doing. We have actually complemented them wherever they have needed us, be it the quarantine centers and its upkeep or up standardization, their sanitation of the quarantine centers, or requirement of say mattresses or security personnel. So those kind of, but otherwise, government has allocated substantial resources for all the activities. As for going forward, what we think is all our awareness campaigns are going to continue. We are reaching out to each and every household and all the quarantine centers, doing our awareness campaigns, talking to the people, making them understand that social distancing and sanitization is the only way out, and this is the new normal. This is not going anywhere, and we have to live with this situation, say 2 months, 3 months, 1 year down the line. So this is how we need to go forward with it. And with the migrant levels, yes, migrant laborers have started coming in. uh, there also we are in sync with government, and on a daily basis we have a monitoring system where we ensure that anyone who is coming in all these panchayats are registered at the quarantine center. They are quarantined, and if uh, we are in green zone, so nobody has been like shown symptoms or anything. But if they show symptoms, they are sent to their samples are sent for test, and they are isolated. So that is how, like, our plan forward is definitely to keep up our good work with the sanitation thing, sodium hydrochloride solutions thing to the
Mhm.
villages, or bleaching powders. And the behavioral change aspect of it is the most important thing that we are looking forward to our grassroots workers and frontline workers.
Yeah, Shweta, I think I should have asked this question previously. You see that this particular pandemic, and that is the reason why the word is called pandemic. It actually it puts everybody at risk. And initially, the disease, as all of us know, started with those who are not, bereft of having 2 square meals a day, and increasingly it spread to the more vulnerable amongst us. So when you are actually choosing your target groups, do you have specifically during related to the COVID and your work around COVID, or do you adopt any kind of measures by which you kind of decide on which group you are going to work on, or it is a general kind of a practice that you adapt?
Thank you for the question. The thing is that here, as I said, that we did not want to duplicate anything that government is doing. So our target group has been chosen very, cautiously. Government has, from initial period of the lockdown, government has been giving ration for migrant laborers also.
Mhm.
Everyone who had ration card, there was a school or some place designated where midday meal was given to everyone who did not have it. We from as a corporate, we tied up with the PRI members and ensure that anyone who doesn't have a ration card, or who is ultra poor, who doesn't get into the list of government, they are
Sward
our
emergence.
they were the one whom we chose to provide with the ration. So those were our target groups basically for providing ration. All on the other hand, for the sanitation or for the awareness thing, it was a general thing. We have gone all out to all the community, all the villages, all the panchayats, even all the quarantine centers in our vicinity. So,
Right.
and even we have been in touch with PSCs, CSCs, providing them with masks, sanitizers, hand wash, and bleaching powder, whatever was required. So we have chipped in there also.
Wonderful, wonderful. Very nice to hear that, and very encouraging to hear that how corporate sectors are making a difference in terms of working hand in hand with both civil society and the government to ensure that the more vulnerable amongst us are actually taken care of. Now, my question, it's a question to both Shomasri and Shweta, is that how do you see, Shweta, you just touched upon this a little bit, how do you see the private sector complementing and augmenting the efforts of the state government and collaborating in addressing the crisis better in the present and coming days? So because COVID is not going to end at the end of this lockdown, all of us know it, it's going to stay with us. So we should be prepared for this, for this new normal. So what would be your kind of advice in, what role the corporate sector can play?
So I would like to say that from you have seen that from donating hefty amounts to the Prime Minister Care Fund to allocating hospitals and all the facilities that you are saying, your ACE card, assets that corporates had, they have gone all out to give it to the for use it as quarantine centers, as isolation centers. So corporates are completely in sync with government, and it is not anyone's. No, it's not just government into it or corporate into it. It is everyone's problem. The pandemic is not leaving anyone behind, and corporate sector, I think, from their group perspective to their each and every unit level, they have been contributing. As I said that every unit, if they have their hospitals and then their in-house, like with us we have our SHG members. So what we did is we ensured that the masks that we are distributing to the community, which is into thousands, are stitched by our own SHG. So during this economic slowdown also, they have the income flowing into the to those vulnerable section of the society. So that way corporates have not only been complementing government with whatever effort that is there, they are also augmenting with them, standardizing the PPEs or manufacturing PPEs,
Right.
and giving it
Wonderful.
all out,
Yes.
buying N95 mask and giving it to the people,
In the
medical professionals,
hospitals.
yeah, in the hospitals, medical professionals, PSCs. So with every unit in the corporate, if they have 17 or 2 or 5, everybody is all out doing whatever they can do in terms of complementing government's efforts.
Wonderful. And Shomasri, would you have any point before we get to our question and answer session on this?
Yeah. As you know, you see, Shwetaji covered all the things like local economy activities has been augmented in this situation. In Paradip Hospitals Limited, with the partners, we are trying to to leverage the government scheme with this after this lockdown period. What just like Odisha Livelihood Mission created this Nutri Garden support to every household. So that is what we are doing now. With just like the NGO partners, we are reaching to the households, providing Nutri Garden to augment the nutrition support. So just like we are also planning this monsoon season also through NREGA, government is spending a lot of amount with us. In NREGA scheme. So we are leveraging that scheme to address the migration issues in the locality also, and creating a job assurance to the local on-skilled labor. So in this situation, what we should think, like most of the migrant laborers, those are semi-skilled laborers, and some are skilled laborers are back to their native villages. So we have to identify their skill set, and we try to generate local employment opportunity for them. And again, with the support of SHG also, we are trying to create alternate livelihood, like different activities with their support. So these are the major things which the corporate should think about after this lockdown period. Yeah.
Wonderful. So thank you, Shaumisri, and thank you, Shweta, for your very wonderful, very well thought of points which you put forward, which clearly shows that the corporate sector actually is working in tandem with the government, with the civil society, and um, okay, with the government and civil society in terms of ensuring that the most vulnerable of the communities, they may either be those who are already living within the communities and have specific vulnerabilities, for example, transgender, senior citizens, visually impaired, or they may have situational vulnerabilities in the sense that they were probably working somewhere outside, they have now lost their livelihood options, they're coming back into a seemingly because they probably had been out of this system for quite some time. They're coming in a seemingly new area, not knowing exactly what services are being provided, how to access those services. So colleagues within the corporate, they are working very closely with the government that I had mentioned to address majorly their health and sanitation needs of these communities, but also they have rendered their services. They have also entered into areas of food and nutrition security, providing dry ration to those people, providing meals for those people, and not only that, also getting into areas of nutrition sensitive intervention, for example, ensuring livelihood stability, providing livelihood options which actually help in strengthening the household food security and household nutrition security. So and also the both our friends from both Shaumisri and Shweta has clearly mentioned that yes, this is a new normal, this is a new kind of setting which have come in and which are going to stay for quite some time. So they intend, I believe they are just a representative of all the people who have come here. So they intend to continue this work in the future to address and alleviate the sufferings and also address the requirements, the food and nutrition security requirements for these more vulnerable communities. Having said that, we now move into the question and answer sessions. So Shaumisri, I think the first question is for you. Yes. So it is PPL doing any micronutrient fortification of the food that it is supplying to the vulnerable population?
So we are, as I already shared, so we are focusing now the pregnant women and lactating mothers in supplying the nutritious food packets, which is immediate support. So wherein we are taking care of, we're giving soya, hosgram, and rasma as a nutrition packets to the pregnant and lactating mothers. They are identified with the support of ASA and Anganwadi workers. So we are giving that. And this is our initial intervention. Yeah, Saurabh?
Yes. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
If you can just mute yourself, Shaumisri, otherwise my voice is echoing. Okay, thank you. Now it is a question to both Shweta. Maybe Shweta, you go first, and then I will request Shaumisri to come in. When it comes to manufacturing and distribution of medical equipment like personal protective equipment, masks, what is being done to maintain sustainability and long-term usage? Since most of these are one-time use items that will add to the waste production in the future. So this is a question about a little bit about the mask management, which we often discuss, and we know plastic has been banned in Odisha, but let us not be faced with a new kind of menace. Lot of masks use use and throw masks being used and they being disposed of inadequately to add a different level of problem in the future. Over to you, Shweta.
As far as sustainability of production of these PPEs are concerned, I think as our PM also in his last address said that no, there are a lot of corporates coming up with the production unit. We did not have no single of them being manufactured in India then, and now we have over 2 lakh per day or 3 lakh per day production of these PPEs. So I think the sustainability and at the supply side will continue as it is with the demand thing. And as far as the unit level corporates are concerned, till the date we feel there is a requirement with the community for this mask. I think we are creating a livelihood option for our SHG women who are into tailoring and all. So this is a good sustainable income for them, and if that is the market demand, we definitely will continue to provide masks. We in fact prefer the cloth masks which are washable and usable, because N95 or even clinical masks are not advised to be used by the common or masses, because there's a very specific uses of those kind of masks, and we really don't need to use those kind of masks. We can use the cloth mask which can be washed and reused. Nevertheless, yes, the waste with the mask which have like one time uses, that problem is there, and I think that will give an opportunity for the waste recycle industry to work on it and come up with some solution.
Yeah, thank you. There is a point from BIPF. What she, I don't know who has asked this question, has said is that with the basic context in terms of how the government, corporate sectors, civil society, they are coming and actually joining hands. It is probably the government and its rules on CSR, corporate social responsibility. It has created a very positive environment, an environment of trust. That is probably something in any kind of partnership. Trust is one of the basic factors that both the partners or all the partners have to trust each other to achieve the necessary desired results. So the gentleman or the lady has said that now that the CSR rules are out and the government, that this trust and enabling environment has been built. So he has asked both of you, is that your work in terms of supporting the communities in their nutrition, nutritionally rehabilitating them in terms of giving them livelihood opportunities, in terms of giving them healthy nutritious options. Is it a kind of a one-time activity, or you really plan to see these interventions going on, probably something you have started now, going on in the foreseeable future as a more sustainable approach?
Somesh, you would like to take the point?
Yeah, I'll add. Like in this pandemic period or in future also, so the nutrition demand will be there. So as long as you are fit, so nothing going to happen. So in our activities, though nutrition we have started to address the COVID-19 issues, but last year we have started this initiative with the community, wherein we identify poorest of the poor families. They joined this initiative and working in the nutrition garden. We used to provide them daily wages to address their livelihood support. Certainly, this is going to the major activity of the corporate, in CSR activities, because nutrition is the life, and we have to take it as a measure. So I think nutrition as a health, in a health perspective, nutrition should be there in corporate social responsibility activities.
Wonderful.
So I would just like to add, because see, it's great that government is coming up with changes in the CSR policy and all. And the thing is that, as Soumya said, that livelihood. This all encompasses this nutrition aspect is also part of livelihood and nutrition garden. There's a lot of government schemes that we are leveraging, be it raising nursery or kitchen garden, or promoting wadi kind of thing, or horticulture, which see all these are some activities that have been always there as part of CSR plan. And we definitely, with this COVID coming in, and we have seen that as it was mentioned that PM mentioned that going local is good. In these times, we have seen that these our own local farmers who have grown the crops and vegetables have only sufficed us, and these kitchen gardens that were there with the very poor and marginalized sections have helped them feed their family in these times. So definitely going forward, this will be the focus area, and all our focus will be on nutrition aspect of the livelihood.
Thank you. Thank you both Shweta and Shomesri. I now remind the house that there is a call to action. We were partners, we joined hands. We said that let us do something together to, work for the nutrition security of the people of Odisha. There is this call to action, and I would urge all the companies who are either present in this webinar or who have not been able to be present in this webinar, nevertheless, to send a one-line email informing your company's willingness to collaborate and join the i4N platform. Those of you who are present here have already pledged, you are pledged partners, but I would request that these message be spread far and wide. With this, I now hand it over to Subhrajyoti to take it further. Thank you.
Thank you, Saurav, for that beautiful moderation which you have done. And also thank you a lot, Someshri and Shweta. You have given some really high quality inputs, and I think we've kicked off this series of webinars with the first one really well. I would now like to invite Monica, who is our Chief of Field Office of Odisha, to come in with the closing remarks.
Good afternoon, colleagues. Can you hear me?
Yes, Monica.
Great. Can you also see me? I'm trying my best with the technology today. It's not always working fine.
Yeah, we can. Everyone
Yeah.
can see it now. Yeah.
Great. Okay. Thank you so much, and good afternoon to all of you. First of all, let me appreciate your, or whoever was speaking, sharing your experiences, and keeping on supporting our communities, particularly those most vulnerable ones. I know that there is a lot of work going on, and we are hearing from our partners how much how much work is being put into supporting communities in this unprecedented crisis. And finally, I think we have to be very glad to see that we can continue this i4N platform going on despite the crisis that we are now facing. Perhaps it's even, as I used to say, crisis that unite people. So perhaps this i4N can keep on uniting us for nutrition for most vulnerable people in Odisha, and not only. I just wanted to start with something that Gitanjali actually mentioned in her opening remarks, is that a very important point, I think, particularly for private business, is the return of investment. So whatever we are doing now, we will be harvesting later, basically. So obviously, children are your future, are our future. And investing in children and children's nutrition, which is basic and most important key or tool to development and growth, will hopefully give back in the future. We will harvest it in the future. So there is definitely an important point of why we should also support children and vulnerable communities. Now, of course, it is heartwarming to hear your stories from the field, Shweta and Somyashri. We have been working closely with PPL for Angawari centers, improving Angawari centers in Paradip. So I know some of the work, but what I also appreciate from both speakers is that kind of holistic approach to whatever you do, and to complement what you support, what government is doing. So you are not replicating, or you are not installing new things. And this is something I think which is very much important and worth noticing for all of us. The holistic approach to nutrition. So looking at the crisis, not only from the health perspective, and if we do look at health from the health perspective, it's also looking at it as a well-being crisis. So as you were mentioning, activities, or rather your interventions on WASH, communication for behavior change, and then finally nutrition, are very well noted and much appreciated. All of this is interlinked, as we know. All those factors are very important, and particularly in emergency crisis like now, they play a very important role. So thank you for this. Now, additional point here is migrants. That is a new kind of playing block in the game, if you like. And this perhaps requires a little bit of a consideration. What do we do really with how best can we support migrants and their families? Because it's not only workers themselves, but also families that are coming with them or returning with them. And how do we really engage with them, and how can we make it meaningful for migrants and their families? And another aspect of it, on the flip side, is also how long can we keep on, and what is our strategy for it? I think all of us, whether it's NGOs or CSOs, and just as much, or maybe even more, private sector, we need to look at strategically at what our interventions are going to look like in coming months, and how long can we keep on the quality of our support. Saurav, in his remarks, made a very good point of ensuring the quality of all the nutrition, food and other supplies, which I think is very important. So it's our job to look at the quality that we can provide throughout the crisis. Although we don't know how long the crisis is going to last, but I think we need to look at perhaps another half a year, where perhaps with different intensity, but communities will need us. Will need your support, and will need our support, and government, of course, who's there. But definitely it needs our strategic thinking, and also action, quick action. I don't know if you have seen a very short film by WHO with recommendations that quick action is better than nothing in such a crisis of pandemic crisis like we are facing. And similarly here, we need to remember of being both strategic, but also act on whatever is needed, and whatever our communities or most vulnerable people need from us. So this is, I think, the gist from what I got from the presentations today, which I really appreciate, and I really appreciate how much is being done, and how much you also remember not only children and breastfeeding mothers and pregnant women, but also people with disabilities and others. And those people will need our support, as we have seen also during FANI last year, that those people are most vulnerable ones, and they will require an extra support from us. So once again, thank you so much. Thank you for joining forces, standing together and uniting for all our, through our activities to support our communities in Odisha. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Monica, for those wonderful words of appreciation for our speakers, as well as giving us a very hands-down information about the situation and very rightly talking about the vulnerable communities, which we all are addressing. So with this, I would like to thank all of you, all our speakers today, all our moderator Saurav, and all of you participants for being here and actually taking part in this very important session on nutrition, and especially focusing on Odisha. I have left Shweta's email ID, sweta@csrbox.com, in the chat box. So if anybody wants to pledge or has any further queries on the Impact on Nutrition platform, they can please address it to Sweta. Yes, thank you. I'll also leave Deborah Paul, who manages the secretariat. I'll also leave an email ID in the chat box for everyone else to see that. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.